to change if a proposal by the NRM Transformer Cadres Association passes.
Proposal to amend electoral laws and other legislation to pave way for hybrid parliamentary system where the head of government would double as the head of state is elected by parliament and a local government council.
The group, made up of mostly NRM leaders who lost in the 2020 primaries, says they want Parliament to instead vote for president. Therefore, whichever party will have the majority in Parliament will automatically choose among them who will become president. This, they say, will stop vote rigging and save the country billions of shillings.
We should come up with a law. If a member of parliament is supposed to spend not more than 250 million, you go ahead and start bribing voters 5,000, 5,000, 10,000 each because you have carried your money from Kampala to confuse the people in the constituencies. When it comes to audit, it will be audited.
This election system is not new to Uganda, though. It is this exact system that was in use in the 1980 presidential elections. But history shows it is not as immune to rigging as its proponents claim. Museveni and others went to the bush in 1980, claiming they were rigged out by the Uganda People's Congress, led by Apollo Milton Obote. The opposition, on its part, says this is a ploy by the ruling government to strangle democracy and to smuggle in first son Muhoozi Kainerugaba to take up the country's top seat. Whereas it is simply a proposal at the moment, the removal of age limits and term limits were proposals too at one point.
We do look at these provisions that the president and the chairperson were given time limit, and we shall certainly point out why we need to provide the necessary limits.
Meanwhile, schools are reopening in 4 days. Parents are, however, already up in arms over what they call exorbitant school fees. Some schools have asked learners to take COVID tests before coming to school. Others say they are not ready to reopen, while some teachers say they won't come in, fearing that government will raise their hopes only to lock down again. And so we ask, how best should school reopening be handled? This is the Frontline. Nbs Frontline.
A very good evening and welcome to this very first edition of the new year 2020 of the Frontline. My name is Charles Mwangu-Shampagi. And the Frontliners, I'll introduce them first and then we'll go to the topic that we're discussing. Let me start. We have the full panel of Frontliners, so I'll start with them. Norbert Mao, President General of the Democratic Party. He is commonly known as Chairman Mao. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles, and Happy New Year to our viewers. And welcome back, OO. I suffered without bitterness while defending some of your untenable positions on the front line.
Thank you, Chairman, for defending my position, our position, and for coming to Mulanda.
Yeah.
On 4th of December for my daughter.
Do you appoint ambassadors so that I can represent Mulanda also?
No. You represent Uganda when the president makes changes.
Doesn't Mulanda have, that area doesn't have a local chief or king?
He's the best ambassador.
No, a local chief or king?
No, they elect their traditional leader.
Yes.
That's something I learned from your speech.
Yes.
And that their campaigns.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Is he campaigning?
No. My clan head is campaigning.
Your clan head is campaigning?
Yes.
Okay.
Ofono would die if he left politics.
Ofono Opondo, Executive Director at the Uganda Government Media Center and the Frontliner. Very nice to have you after a very long absence.
Thank you. 4 months or 5, yeah, since August. But I'm glad to be back.
Yes. And we can tell where you've been.
As Milton used to say.
We can tell you've been. And congratulations, by the way, we congratulated you on the show on marrying your 2 children, your son and your daughter.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'm gracefully aging.
You're grace.
Yeah.
Now nice the words you hurl towards the kingdom of Buganda have to be measured.
No. The in-laws have to tell. No, we can now talk in the house.
So the things you used to say outside, now you can discuss it.
Now you have access.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Fair
those
enough.
are the two frontliners. Let me introduce the guests on the frontline tonight. Starting with in between Ofono Pondo and Norbert Mao is Joel Senyonyi, Member of Parliament representing Nakawa West constituency and also Chair of Parliament's Public Accounts Committee. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles. Happy New Year to you, colleagues here, and the viewers out there.
You should first confess that you were harassing Honorable Joel Senyonyi about a road in Chanja. Now, if a person at your level can harass an MP, now imagine how much harassment he faces from the Omuntu Wawansi.
Let me do the confession. Let me do the confession.
I'm not going to say what OO said in reply.
I'll do the confession. I'm not asking the MP to build a road for us. Government built a road. Almost 200 landowners agreed to the compensation. One person along the stretch of road, that ring road, refused compensation. The contractor stayed on that road for many, many, many months. And I believe as a taxpayer, we lost more money. As a resident of an area, we are continuing to lose. And I think it's a very dangerous sport. So the question was, can Parliament ask what happened? Linus here was telling me that it appears the matter is in court, that that person took KCCA to court to demand compensation. And I'm thinking, what level of selfishness?
I think, you see, ultimately, courts should expedite some of these issues, yeah? Because the person is raising their concern, that's their property, there's a public good that has got to be taken care of. Resolve it quickly, you know, because at the end of the day, we don't want the public good to suffer. For Charles and others who must be able to use that road to suffer, that's the bigger population. But also, the other person, their rights shouldn't be infringed. If they have an issue, court resolve that very quickly, and then we'll be able to move.
But OO
the
said
issue shouldn't
that
stay
the
there
government
forever.
is in the hands of NUP, the government of that part of Kampala, and also the larger Kampala. And according to President Museveni, breaking down that man's house would have been easy. The new president drives a grader.
Oh, yeah.
According to reliable sources.
I'll borrow, since it's my constituency and it neighbors the other, I'll borrow that tinga.
So later the new president just show up with the grader and say, your house or your life.
No, actually, there is no house affected in that area. And I have called, I did call Joel and raise the issue as a constituent to raise the matter.
We talked about it, but hopefully court can deal with this matter
I
very
have three
quickly.
other MPs. I can make the point, the case for my neighbors and myself, that it's not a question of asking the MP to do a road. It's asking them to represent us.
But just to mention that I'm actually having to, it's very preposterous really, that as an MP, I'm having to contribute to certain roads being built. So what happens is the locals wait and know what gets to happen. The drainage is actually messing up their houses, and they say, you know what? Let's do something. They collect some money amongst themselves. And they say, MP, we've been able to do this, make a contribution, and I do so that their houses get saved as we wait for, you know, the excuse normally is budget and so on.
It's a better thing than Twagala government to Yambe.
No, but it's not a good practice. Services must be delivered.
Gentlemen,
I'm a member of
for
Parliament.
me, I miss General
not
Kasiria Gwanga. That guy would have been sorted out very quickly.
Chairman Mao, you have conspired to derail my show.
I'm sorry. I'm just excited seeing OO back.
Let me introduce, from Kira, I have the Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles.
And last but not least, I have from Kibanda West, Kibanda North constituency, from the National Resistance Movement, one of the most ardent followers of my shows from the time I was doing KFM Hot Set, Linus Ngompek. Very nice to have you.
Nice to have you too, members. Good evening, viewers. Greetings from Chibanda North, Chibanda South, and Kiriandongo.
You used to be from
and we wish you all...
He used to be from Pakwach.
He used to be from
yeah,
Pakwach.
Originally, I'm from Pakwach, but we grew up from Kiriandongo. So the people of Kiriandongo wishes you all the best in 2022.
And 2022, just hardly a year, I mean, just shy of the year since we held an election. A proposal is presented at a press conference this afternoon, but actually I learned of it yesterday that there is a push to amend the Constitution or a start of a campaign to amend the constitution, to change the form of election, especially for the president, and change the representation from a presidential system that we run at the moment to a parliamentary system. We'll be discussing that. There's also concern that President Yoweri Museveni announced that the economy will fully reopen starting with schools on Monday, 10th of January. Parents, school administrations, teachers scrambling to beat that deadline and, to get back their children into school almost after 2 years of being out of school. We'll discuss a little bit of that. And maybe we'll comment about Kakwenza Rukirabasaije, who's been, court has ordered he be released, but he's not being released. He's a controversial activist who does most of his work on Twitter. And he made some comments that were uncharitable, and he's ended up in court. We'll start with the big story, which is the story of the discussion about amendment of the Constitution yet again to to provide for a presidential system where political parties front candidates for parliament, select the candidates for parliament, those are elected, and they decide who becomes president. On the show, I have two lawyers. Yes, I have two lawyers. Those will help us to navigate the discussion, and others are political scientists, journalists, and others. And we'll be discussing. Let me start with you, Chairman Mao. You've been in this way. Are you surprised? What is your take on this proposal, which was announced at the press conference earlier today?
I'm not a political scientist.
You're a lawyer.
But I chose politics as my vocation. I prefer to say I'm a public servant and also a public intellectual. There are systems of government, and every country has a duty and a right to select which system. In Uganda, we chose the presidential system, and we also have our electoral system known as first past the post, which basically means if you have 15 parliamentary candidates and the leading candidate has 15%, that one goes to parliament and represents their 100%. Now, OO has discouraged debate over this rumor, but like I tweeted earlier, never believe a rumor until it is denied. Now that it has been denied, it is even more interesting to debate. There's a book I read once called Don't Think of an Elephant. When you are told not to think about something, and when you are told not to talk about something, then you really get the urge to talk about it. So I'm not surprised that all Ugandans are debating this, and there are many theories related to that. Some people are saying, given the advanced or advancing age of our president, he now wants one polling station only instead of 36,000 polling stations. He wants one polling station where all the voters can be watched at a go, and they are also in a confined place. That is one theory. The other one is that he dreams of a kind of North Korea scenario to start a kind of Kim dynasty. I'm talking about theories.
Or rumors.
Well, we claim to be a democracy, so people are allowed to project and to share their imaginations. So that's one of the imaginations, that there is a plan to ensure that the Uganda government stays in the Kaguta family. That is one conspiracy theory. Of course, I'm not the first to say it. I'm just a mirror reflecting it. It was first stated by people in NRM. So for once, the opposition is not to blame for this. Then the third one, which I think is supposed to be debated, is that the winner take all is generally a bad system. So when you have a parliamentary system, then you have an executive prime minister who goes to work daily in parliament and faces the people, rather than an imperial president who reigns from behind an army of bodyguards and layers of people who basically shield him or her from the pressures of people's demands. So in that case, you would then have a prime minister from whichever party that has to go to parliament and face the MPs on a daily basis. They will have a proper work day. And then you have got a president who is going to be in the background to greet ambassadors from foreign countries, to deliver ceremonial addresses, to receive heads of state, and to carry out functions akin to that of the president of Israel. Many Ugandans don't think that Israel has a president, the president of Germany, and so on. And for us in the Democratic Party, we go further because we believe that the answer to the politics of domination or the winner take all lies in what we call proportional representation.
Thank you very much. I'll come back to you.
Therefore, my take is that this is a healthy debate, and if the government is honest, they have to address it. In any case, this is not the first time these ideas have been tabled. We tabled proposals
I'll pick it
to
up
the
from
parliamentary committee.
I'll pick it up from you after that, later. Honorable Senyonyi, you had the proposal. I have listened to you debating it before coming here on other platforms. Were you surprised by this? And as the National Unity Platform, what's your take on this?
Charles, so as a lawyer, I've read a few, trying to do some research on a few constitutions here and there. And when you make the comparison, in all honesty, our country has one of the best constitutions in terms of content and several other things. You know, you look at the Bill of Rights, for example. You look at the way it strengthens and empowers institutions. On paper, in the Constitution, yeah? It's an amazing one. Of course, we keep tearing it apart, tearing it to shreds. How I wish we were to put into effect the Constitution as it is. It would be an amazing country. I wanted to read for you a small bit of the preamble to our Constitution. We, the people of Uganda, recalling our history, which has been characterized by political and constitutional instability, recognizing our struggles against the forces of tyranny, oppression, and exploitation, etc., etc., trying to give a justification for why our constitution is the way it is. We put in place, as a country, in the 1995 constitution, term limits because of our history, that power doesn't change hands peacefully. Blood has to be shed and all of that. And so the framers of the constitution said, you know what, let's have safeguards in place. Let us have term limits as one of the safeguards. Let us have age limit, etc., etc. Because I've heard the narrative by some people that, but you see, there are countries where there's no term limits and they thrive. UK, Germany, etc., etc.
But that was a discussion how many years ago?
I'm just trying to build this point, bring it to this. And I had Mr. 72 at the time saying, but you see, of course, after shortchanging Uganda and says, no, I will not go beyond 2006, and then shortchanges them. So eventually, his narrative was, yeah, but you see, I'll offer myself to Ugandans. If they don't like me, they won't vote for me. But you see, those countries are different from Uganda in many respects. In those countries, you don't have a totalitarian president that literally is in charge of everything, that will use the army the way they want to use it. You know, that will use Bank of Uganda money or central government money the way they want to, that will roughshod over institutions and overrun them. And that's why, in our constitution, they had to put in place those safeguards, term limits, age limits, and of course to make sure we have a presidential system. Because again, yes, they use those examples. You see in the UK, it's a parliamentary system. you see, the UK has an unwritten constitution. Again, because of the nature of the country. Ours is written, everything is clearly adumbrated because of our history, because of who we are as a country. Now, the suggestion by this group, they call themselves what? Activists?
No, transformers.
Transformers.
Yes.
You know, that group, for starters, they contradict themselves. Because that group is made up of people who lost in the NRM primaries. And as they were, you know, stating their case, they talked about how they were rigged in the NRM primaries. And they said some of the people in parliament shouldn't be there because they rigged their way to parliament. And now these are the same people who are saying, no, parliament is a good representation of Uganda. That Chairman Mao doesn't have to be in parliament. His MP there can represent him and vote on his behalf. But you see, the same people are saying, no, these guys in parliament, many of them, they rigged, they shouldn't be there. That's not the voice of the people. We are the voice of the people. But then they say, no, the guys who are there are the voice of the people. It doesn't make sense. It's a clear contradiction. But you see, this is how these situations have always happened. You remember in 2005, this debate began as a joke of term limits, led by Honorable Kakoza, who is now at Ayala. And it was actually dismissed by government people, and even Mr. Museveni said, what are you talking about? No, we are focusing on other things and so on, until eventually the real owner came out. Same thing with age limit. When the Simeon Subugas, even Nanites were running around, he said, no, our focus is economic, you know, recovery and so on. These things, what are you talking about? Then eventually he came out. So for this one too, you look at a group of, some people have called them jokers and so on, but the jokers have somebody who is fronting them, and that person is going to come through in not so long a while.
This proposal is by NRM parliamentary losers. And you saw them at the press conference. Dressed in yellow, they profess their loyalty to the NRM party, and they're saying it's time to amend the constitution. I know the proposals are many, but the central one is on how we arrive at the president. Like Chairman Mao has said, some of those theories, the president can no longer run around, and so Senyonyi says we've seen this before.
First of all, I am surprised that Honorable Mao, who has been representing me so well, can now choose to misrepresent me when I'm here, falsely accusing me of saying don't debate. I have not said so. What I have said is that officially and formally, the government of Uganda, the NRM party, has not sat anywhere. Its official organs have not sat anywhere and mooted or presented, or anybody presenting that proposal. That's what we have said. Not the government of Uganda, not any organ of the party. However, and I'm surprised because we are all saying there should be freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of creativity. If there are Ugandans, like Honorable Mao said, he would want to amend the constitution to bring proportional representation so that over-dominance by one party is dealt away with. We are not chastising him for making that proposal. These Ugandans, whether they are NRM or not, have the freedom, constitutional freedom and right to make suggestions. My own take from what they have said, that they lost the parliamentary race. My suspicion is that they are seeking attention from the party leadership. I've spoken to some of them, including their chairperson. I think, yes, I think they are seeking attention from the leadership of the party, and they think that perhaps this is one way to captivate attention of the leadership. That's one area. Secondly, I have said they have the constitutional right to speak and make proposals. And those who have other proposals can bring them, and those proposals contained with the proposals of this group. So I find no contradiction whatsoever. Now, the accusation that this is how things start in rumors by people who are not official. Actually, that's in democracy, that's how things should be. That ordinary citizens, and in this particular case, they are leaders at some level, start something and they convince their party, they convince their leaders, they build convergence on their ideas. If the leadership of NRM, eventually this matter comes to them and they buy into it, that would actually imply that ordinary people in the NRM influence leadership in the NRM, and therefore there is effective democracy in the NRM. And whether the president wants it or not, if the force in NRM pushes him, he as a worker of the party, a worker of Uganda, will have no choice.
You need to see how Senyon is looking at you.
Yeah, we'll have no choice. Yeah, yes. We'll have
a statement. Me, I don't want, but my people are the ones who want.
Because you see, Museveni has ceased to be an individual. He's now an instrument, a worker of the party. It is the party that deploys him, that tells him, please, you are not going nowhere.
Yes, that he's not anybody's servant.
Because you took that one out of context again. So he will have no choice if the party members say, we want you.
Okay.
And so that's really the position. But finally, let us go back to the draft constitution of Odoki. Actually, that proposal was there, that parliamentary elections are expensive, universal elections are expensive. Therefore, we should go for indirect elections for some of the elections. President was one of them. Women members of parliament was another one. District councillors was among another one. Persons with special interest groups were another one. But eventually, in the CA, it was agreed that 3 levels should be elected directly: the president, parliament, and district chairpersons. For a while, women members of parliament were elected them indirectly. And therefore, it is also not correct, not true, not factual. Honorable Senyon, yes. First of all, we don't use, our constitution is not presidential. It's actually hybrid. That's why there is no arm of government which is superior to the other. What is superior is the constitution of Uganda. We don't run a presidential system. Yes, the president is the head of the executive and has certain authority, but he's not the supreme. What is supreme in Uganda
is the constitution.
Is the constitution. Now, Senyon is saying that that was the consensus. That was the consensus in 1995. These are how many years? These are 26 years. Surely it is coming to a generation. So if a new generation says the consensus of 1995 no longer serve us well, what's the problem?
Thank you.
And finally, the reason, yes, while those were the position, the framers of the Constitution actually put chapter 16, 18 on amendment. If they knew that this Constitution should not be touched, they would not have put a whole chapter
on its amendment. Okay.
On how each part of the Constitution can be touched.
Thank you very much. Honorable Semujunganda, the proposal. I like the way...
Coming soon to a theatre near you.
I like the way OO puts it. He explains the accusation that this is how things start, and he's brought it. You've been in Parliament, you're a journalist, so you have seen, at least in Parliament, you've seen through 2 amendments? No, the major amendment was the one of 2017 on age limit. The other one had come much earlier in 2005. 2005-6, yes. 2005 going into the 2006 elections. This proposal, any surprises for you? Its source, the people pushing for it, and how it's likely to end up?
I think the NRM politicians, majority, are fortune hunters. They spend most of the time guessing what Mr. Museveni wants, what will benefit Mr. Museveni. I was a journalist in Parliament when the debate on term limits started. Actually, that debate was never started by Museveni. But there are NRM politicians who knew that by the Constitution, Mr. Museveni will not stand in 2006. So they started positioning themselves who will now help Museveni to stand, because it is an enterprise, very rewarding. I remember a group, I don't know which name must have been part of that group, Kakoza and others who went to meet Museveni in Gulu. And they told him, sir, are you interested? And Museveni, being Museveni, he said, no, I am not interested. You see, the debate should be on the principle, not on a person. So they came back puzzled. Does the man want or he doesn't want? Because they always face that problem. Sometimes they push things he doesn't want, and then he disowns them. The age limit was also not started by Museveni, by the way. But like a group during the 7th Parliament, this group knew that Museveni would be interested because he's interested to die in office. So why don't we capitalize? So the first group that sat are the ones that brought in Magezi. The country doesn't know that Magezi was never part of the original group. They looked at someone who is close to Kadaga, who will find it easy pushing through such an amendment in Parliament.
There was actually another MP
and then
who
hired
the
him.
Sekitoreko.
No, Sekitoreko, his was madness, was a different thing. He wanted, in fact, him, he had wanted term limits removed for electoral commission. I think they are the ones who had hired him. So most of these maneuvers are not started by Museveni. They are started by people who know that he's interested, and therefore if I start, because they are very shameful. And Museveni is happy that they are done that way, because he wants to distance himself.
So do you think in a way he engineers them somehow?
They don't even give him an opportunity to engineer, because they know he's interested, but he's hiding. Let us start, and then I'll be a rich person, I'll be a minister, I'll be this and that. If they left him, certainly he would engineer. But they don't even afford him that time, so the schemers. In the last Parliament...
In that case, he's a victim, would you say?
He's not a victim.
He's a beneficiary, but a reluctant one.
He's not reluctant. He's actually interested, but they move ahead of him. In the last Parliament, when he was speaking, either to Cabinet or one of those meetings of NRM, he said 5 years is a very short time. I spent the first 2 years assembling a cabinet, convincing among of UPs to come and join, do this and that. And then the last 2 years for campaigning. So really 5 years, then they know he's interested. Now why don't we stay in Parliament for 7 years, since now the man is interested. So they came to Parliament running. Now we should amend the Constitution to make sure that the term is
7 years.
7 years, and he's starting with us. So this particular group, the Honorable Numba Tomao pointed out, know that Mr. Museveni is now an older man. There are things he cannot do, even when you look at him. So what will he want? Maybe he's interested in now a parliamentary system where he will not have to campaign village to village. Why don't we start that? So individuals are not starting this because they think it will improve elections or governance in Uganda. But it is an enterprise that you can sell to someone who captured Uganda, and everything rotates around him. So that's the only motivation. It has nothing to do, because I have not read the justification that the current system we have is very bad, therefore this will improve this, therefore
they say
this.
It's very expensive.
No, the academic, I'm looking at the real. So when did they discover that it's very expensive? Where have they been? Are they new people?
After going through an election and losing and putting in a lot of money.
So they are not new in politics, all of them. I mean, they are just, yeah, so they are just simply a group that lost an election, the first one, party primary, and therefore it's an opportunity now. Anite became an MP immediately after kneeling in Chankwanza and telling Museveni, you can rule for life. So she became a minister. I remember after the removal of term limits, all those who were making noise in the Parliament, Kakoza, Bakabulindi, everybody became a minister. And so therefore, these MPs are just, I mean, these NRM people are just positioning themselves, thinking that since Museveni acts that way, very deceptive, so you have to keep thinking of what he wants, and then you do it fast, because if you don't do it, other people will do it.
And then you lose out.
And then you lose out.
Okay.
So you move ahead of them and try to do it very, very quickly. And knowing Museveni, by the way,
I remember some group that was calling itself M3.
Yes.
Remember that around Parliament?
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah.
Museveni, me, and what? And
Kakoza.
Kakoza.
But Charles, knowing Museveni, this is not a proposal he will buy.
Okay.
Knowing Museveni.
Linus.
He, even if Museveni becomes, or even if he's in a casket, he will still want power. And he can't subject himself to a group of MPs.
A group of
that
MPs
Museveni that I know.
That would appoint him, but also can censure him easily.
He will not subject himself to this proposal. He will fight. Museveni will want to subject himself to an election and rig it, or he will announce himself a winner like the former Kenyan president did.
Okay, Linus, I find this quite intriguing. And we can go back. 1986, the NRA shoots itself to power, takes over power.
No, it is the other way around.
NRM. By 1987, President Museveni is telling people in Lubira, that meeting in Lubira, saying, why should we be, 1986, why should we be hanging around for so long? 2 years is enough, we'll manage a transition, hand over to civilian authority, after reading his fundamental change speech. And I think many people misquote the president on that fundamental change speech. He said, I think what is happening is not a mere change of guard. I think it is a fundamental change.
So he wasn't sure either.
No, he wasn't. And people just deleted out the I think and continued talking about the fundamental change speech. Yeah. But by 1987-89, you're already discussing an extension of the government then that was supposed to run a transition for 2 years. At the center is President.
It was 4 years.
Eh? No, initially they discussed 2 years.
No,
he said
the meeting in Irubiri,
legal notes
2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 7 years. The proposal of 2 years was Museveni's.
Yes.
But he was persuaded to say, okay, 4
exactly,
years.
that's what I'm talking about.
That
the comrades say, you need at least 4 years. And he says, no, 4 years doing what? And, 4 years doing what? I am not a politician, I am a soldier. 2 years should be enough.
Could you tell us?
Could you allow?
He's not a politician. That's what Chagulanyi said. When he became a member of parliament, he said he's not a politician.
Not your quintessential politician.
Okay. Now,
what is it now?
And at the center of it, so the discussion around should it be 4 years, should it be 2 years? At the center of it is President Yoweri Museveni. Yeah. You make a constitution, the Odochu Commission makes all those proposals. 1994, you're drafting the constitution. 1995, October 8th, you're promulgating the constitution. That puts a limit, 2 years. Right, let's test this constitution. By 2001, immediately after the election of 2001, you're discussing its amendment. Almost immediately after. Then you're discussing another amendment, you're discussing another amendment. And sometimes many people are left to wonder, is really the president, as Semuju puts it, people reading his mind and framing these things for their own selfish interests, or is there some behind the scenes cooking of some of these things that you see come from very unexpected corners or quarters, and then they come to fruition, and everybody embraces them. The Attorney General today has denied that he's not aware. The spokesperson of the party and the government, Ofono Pondo, has denied. The government chief whip has denied. He said, we haven't seen this, but nobody's dismissing it out of hand, saying, we can discuss it. Are you looking at something bigger? You're a member of the party.
Yeah, it's a good debate. It's a very good debate. And the trend at which we are moving towards, like Uganda, such debates are healthy because the Constitution gives us the right to come up with issues to discuss. And if those issues really matter, I think it's good also for us to take it up. In the NRM caucus of Parliament, we've not discussed this idea yet, though individually we can discuss issues of the parliamentary system and the presidential system, because if you sit and look back, you realize that Uganda, from the British protectorate, we've tested very many systems. We've had even the military council. We've also had the decree by Idi Amin, and now we are on the presidential system. And if, in any case, this idea that individuals, in fact, even these NRM members who came up today also just picked it up from from the streets, and they took it up and started discussing it because they saw it as something.
The streets of the parliamentary caucus, the NRM caucus in parliament, or the ordinary streets?
It's been moving on the social media streets for a long time. So they had to come together and fix it up and call a press to discuss this issue. But as Uganda, we've been having this presidential system, which has been very costly. Because I remember in 2016, Electoral Commission presented the budget of 419 billion to Ministry of Finance just to fund elections. Then in 2021, their budget shot up to 896.17 billion just to fund election within the 3 months. Yet this money, if really saved, can do a lot of things, can equip hospitals, can work on roads. And then too, our elections are always violent. The recently concluded election, you saw how many Ugandans died on the streets, and a lot of property was destroyed. So I believe that if we adopt the parliamentary system, that will be way cheaper for us as a country to manage, because we shall save a lot of resources and also a lot of logistics. And then too, we shall also, the political parties will also have an opportunity of going deep down to constituencies, especially the party chairpersons, to look for votes for their parliamentary candidates, because here we shall be looking at the party. Because in the parliamentary system, the party with the largest number of members of parliament will present a president, will vote for a president. And if no DP, UPC, all go on ground, because it won't be violent, usually in the presidential campaigns, that's when violence is. But for members of parliament, there's minimal violence. So if all these political parties go on ground and talk to the local people and convince them, and they are voted, and they become the biggest number of political parties in the House, basically we shall have that opportunity of having a president who will manage the country very well. So for us as NRM, if they bring up this matter in our caucus, I know majority of our members will support it, because
you said these discussions have been going on somehow
individually.
So you've been having them as members of the NRM?
Individually, not officially, but one-on-one, we discuss. We will
so
discuss
this group, this Transformers group is giving them, beginning the formalization of an idea that's been mooted.
No, I don't. I told you, they got it on. They picked this from the streets, social media streets. But for us as individuals, we've been discussing the system that works best for our country. Because where we are headed to, we don't need politics where we have violence, where we see our colleagues in the opposition and attacking government, then government also forces also attacking them. But we need to have a smooth campaign process. And if you realize and see that the presidential system, since 2006, we've been having a lot of issues. But now if we transit to the parliamentary system, I believe we shall go back to the people, talk to them, give them the merits of the system, and then if our voters say it's okay, let's go by that, we shall follow. If they reject the idea still, we shall also come and report to Parliament and tell the Speaker that no, our electorates don't.
Let me throw this out, and I'll go back to Chairman Mao. The coincidences of these things, just like you said in your submission, do they surprise you that the originality is from quarters you hardly expect, from 2005 to the one after 2016 elections, now to this one?
We have heard it from somebody who is from the NRM, who is elected an MP. He has just admitted that a whispering campaign has now become a very loud campaign. I do believe that there is a choreography behind all this. I don't think it is just about seeking relevance. There are many other ways of seeking relevance. There are those who have sought relevance by threatening to defect, and they have been called for political counseling and reorientation and redeployment. In this case, we should look at the substance of the debate. Today, somebody asked me, what would be your position as the Democratic Party? I told the person that as DP, we don't just have to react whenever the NRM activists come up with anything. We are a party which is established with our policies and values. I got a call from somebody from New Vision who wanted me to react to that drama. I call this drama, but behind the drama there's something serious, which serious people cannot ignore. So
we were chatting about Lord of the Flies before we started the show, and I was remembering a chapter chorister. Who's the chapter chorister?
Well, whenever there's a puppet, there's a puppeteer. And sooner or later, that becomes obvious. I believe strongly that any Ugandan cannot ignore. You know, if you are in school and a little boy comes and boxes you, and he really has no capacity to fight you, before you launch a counterattack, you need to look around and see whether there's some bigger boy who is trying to provoke you in a fight you may regret. So, fortunately, this is not the first time. Sometimes the feigned buffoonery that you see in the NRM is really feigned. It is not real buffoonery. You know, somebody comes and behaves almost like a lunatic, uttering things that are unpalatable. But sooner or later, it is given shape, it is reframed, and then it is owned. For now, you could say this idea is an orphan. But orphans actually have parents, because there is no child that just erupts out of nowhere. People are called orphans either because their parents have not acknowledged them. So this orphan will also finally find its true parents. Because but the DNA is familiar. We don't need to do a DNA test. The DNA will be traced. Now, I believe that the substance of this debate has got to be tackled by people who are looking beyond the reign of President Museveni. I have complained here before about Musevenizing every debate. You can Musevenize debate, but you need to do it within limits. When you take it too far, you lose sight of very important things that will happen. It has happened elsewhere. In Zimbabwe, everything was about Mugabe. Eventually, the man left, and they still have the albatross around their necks. The South Africans thought apartheid was about who sleeps in the State House, who is a minister, who is a president. Then they discovered that actually apartheid is nothing of that. It is more than that. So if we want to end the politics of domination in Uganda, if we want to deal with the disadvantages that we have faced for years about the winner take all, we need a system which will allow Ugandans to negotiate virtually everything, where you need each other. Right now, the NRM leads like it does not need anybody. In the parliament, the NRM doesn't need any opposition vote to pass anything. the Honorable MP for Kibanda North said that this system will tame violence. I don't think there is evidence to support that. How come violence was not tamed in Zimbabwe, which is an internal election? You are saying you want to save the opposition. Why didn't you save those Zimbabwe people? Where guns were pulled. It was like something out of the Wild West in Hollywood films.
Thank you.
So I don't think that is the proper argument. I believe that each political party has its convictions. The system we are talking about, as Semuju said, is a system that comes with some risks. Because if you have a parliament that is used to the pay-as-you-go system, you can easily have MPs given a cash bounty and they'll vote out the president on the basis of give and take. That can only be tamed if, for instance, because I had something that they have talked about, which was also in the Odoki report and even in the draft constitution. There was supposed to be a National Council of State. If you have a large parliament of 529 MPs and you know their appetite for money, then you need a speed governor in the shape of an upper house. That is not just a Ugandan thing. Even in America, the House of Representatives finds it very easy to impeach any president. It doesn't matter the charges. It is only the Senate which comes in and tames their... Because if you don't have control, if you still have a lot to prove...
What happens if the Senate also has a high appetite?
MPs don't have high appetite for money.
I am giving you examples that are demonstrated. First of all, there are fewer.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid we need to take a break, but there are two things I need. I'll come back to you to complete your thought, but the other two questions I need to throw out just before you take the break is, do you think, at least I have two people here, no, three, that have been active practitioners in the media, Senyonyi, Ofono Pondo, and Semuju Uganda. Does the media fall victim of these things? Because if you see the attention this has been given, it's like the media is fanning the flames of this discussion, and within a very short period of time, whether palatable or unpalatable, it will have picked up in the public psyche, that it gets discussed, it gets normalized. And it is an accusation that has come up repeatedly over other schemes that have, other amendments, what some people have called schemes. But we'll discuss this after a very short commercial break. We'll be right back.
Nbs Frontline.
Have you ever wondered how you conduct business online? Make that call to a friend. Watch TV with family. And even check